One of the pieces was sort of sticking out.
The argument is baffling. Just the text messages between John O'Keefe and the defendant.
Yes, I did.
She just rolled her eyes and put her head back down. And I thought it was just bizarre.
Karen Reed's retrial now has the first week behind it. Now, is the retrial going to just be a sequel? Or if it's different, how will it be different?
Is the retrial of the Karen Reed case going to be any different from trial number 1? I'm Lainey Law.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers.
And while we're going to have to wait and see what the verdict is, I already have some feelings towards this retrial going on. What have you been up to? What are your thoughts, Andrew?
Well, yeah, I was watching it all. I watched it all this week, even when I had clients in it. I had to prepare a case that's coming up to go forward. I watched it all when I went home at night. I didn't even wait till after dinner. My concentration and my curiosity level forced me to watch before I had dinner. And I think things are going to be a little bit different. Whether they're better, I don't know. Mr. Brennan's opening argument was somewhat jaw-dropping. He didn't even mention Michael Proctor, which a lot of people, including after I watched it, I watched the opening argument. And I said, "Wait a minute, did I miss something? Because I watched it at home. I went into work late that day, and I watched it at home. And so I was in the kitchen, getting the dishes into the dishwasher and things like that. I'm like, did I miss something? No, I didn't. I went back and watched it again, and then I saw a lot of commenters were saying, "Wow, that's like." I hate to use phrases that are so overused, but it is the elephant in the room that he didn't mention Michael Proctor in the opening, because Mr. Proctor was the lead investigator, and as we all know, he has now been dishonorably discharged. So why don't we jump right into the opening? And we're going to look, to be fair, we're going to look at both, but because Mr. Brennan went first, we'll take a look at Hank Brennan's opening. He gave his opening argument in storytelling format, which is okay, starting with the emergency call going into the Canton Police Department.
At 6:04 a.m. on January 29, 2022, the alarm bell sounded in the Canton Fire Department. Firefighter paramedic Timothy Nuttall knew what that meant. His heart skipped a beat. He raced to his equipment, and he picked up his bag, which was meticulous. There was a sign and a signal, and then there was a voice commanding that there was cardiac arrest.
So yeah, this is one style of doing an opening argument. There are all different ways to do it. If you study trial law and you take trial law classes and you try a lot of cases, you try a lot of different styles yourself. I don't know if this was effective. I really don't. But one thing you have to give Mr. Brennan is that he memorized the whole thing. That is hard. That is difficult. Some people have eidetic perfect memories. Yeah, thank you, Sheldon, for teaching us that. But even if you have a perfect eidetic memory, the risk is that you forget something. The risk is that you don't check all the boxes. So a lot of people, like we're going to see Alan Jackson, for the most part, not always, but at the most part, stood at the podium, and he did what most people do. You have bullet points of the stuff you absolutely, positively must mention in the opening. But whether this was effective or not, why don't we ask our viewers, was this an effective opening?
The most serious of calls for a firefighter and paramedic, that means that a person's heart has stopped. He didn't know who it was. He didn't know where it was. He took his bag. He had just gotten to the station, and he rushed to the ambulance. He was one of the most senior paramedics that morning. Another paramedic, Anthony Flamati, would be running this mission. He jumped in the back of the ambulance. The door shut, and they headed off to 34 Fairview Road. As they drove, firefighter Nuttall could not see anything. He couldn't hear anything other than the engine of the ambulance. He could feel it sliding across the road. It was near blizzard conditions. He calmed himself. He steadied himself. This is what the the firefighters and paramedics are trained to do, to focus. And he focused on his task. He looked around the back of the ambulance to make sure all the tools were in place. The ambulance was meticulous as well. This was Anthony Flamatti's ambulance, and it was well stocked.
I'm pausing real quick just to mention that, obviously I'm not the juror in this case, but if I am a juror in this case, and even just watching this right now, my mind is kind of glazing over. What does this have to do with anything? I don't know if that's going to be how they perceive it. I'm like, this is not like, obviously they're going to the scene, but it's just like, okay, thank you for this beautiful imagery of being a first responder, firefighter, which this case barely is adjacent to. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's fine. And the thing is that, again, this is one style of an opening argument to be a storyteller. I remember when we started doing these podcasts, only 2 years ago. I talked to a lot of people. I did a lot of research. But the thing that I kept being told over and over and over again is what people want is they want a storyteller. So I guess Hank Brennan got that advice, but the problem is, and we're going to see this as we go through this, he's really building up this first witness, Mr. Nuttall, who, in my view, was a fail.
He calmed himself and he thought about what was going to happen. What should he be looking for? What is his next steps? He played the scenarios through his mind, and eerie calm was above him. As the car pulled up to 34 Fairview, the ambulance, he stood at the back door, the doors open, and he stepped out into Dedham. He could hear a woman screaming and shrieking, the cold, hard air slapping on his face, and the wind, blizzard conditions swirling around him. You will hear him tell you how he trudged towards those screams in the darkness to snow, and when he got there, he saw 3 women surrounding a man lying, not moving on the ground. He walked up to the man and he reached down and he tried to find any signs of life, pulse, anything. And he found nothing. And he got up and he walked over to the woman and he walked over to that defendant, Carrie, and he told her that he thinks that man is gone.
Okay, Brennan then went on to tell the jury about the 3 separate legal counts. We've talked about them before. The 3 charges that were brought against Karen Reed, and he explained what he wants them to see.
The first one, second-degree murder. When most people hear murder, they instantly think shooting somebody, stabbing somebody, putting with a bit of premeditation. Our Honor will instruct you on the law. I'm not going to trample in that area, but I can tell you clearly, we are not going to try to prove that Karen Reed tried to kill John O'Keefe. We're not going to try to prove to you that she intended or wanted him dead. That's not second-degree murder. What we'll prove to you is she engaged in an intentional act, driving back at him at that speed, in the storm, in the darkness, knowing that he had just gotten out of her Lexus. She intended that act, which could cause a plain, strong likelihood of death. That's what will prove to you second-degree murder. Also, operating under the influence of alcohol, manslaughter will prove to you that she drove her Lexus recklessly. She hit John O'Keefe, and because she hit him and he fell back, she caused his death. The third charge is leaving the scene after knowingly causing death. Again, she hit Mr. O'Keefe with a car. She knew he was injured. She left him behind. And he died. That's the whole group. This case will come down to the science and the data. The science and the data that cell phone produce the best of historians. It doesn't suffer from intoxication. It doesn't suffer from memory loss. It doesn't suffer from emotion, pride, or prejudice.
And then the special prosecutor got into all the media interviews that Karen Reed has given.
But after Miss Reed was charged, she began what you'll learn as a campaign. A campaign to make public statements. 2020, Nightline, Fox 25, a documentary. And we've had an opportunity to get many of her statements in the footage, and we're going to show much of these. And her statements to you will confirm what you already know from the science and the data, what you will already conclude from the facts independent about what she did that night. her word simply confirm that your judgment is sound. And you're going to hear from her own lips in many of her statements, her admissions to extraordinary intoxications, her admissions to driving in the Alexis.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in drunkenness and in the cold didn't come to again?
And this would have been the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
All right. I don't know. I really don't want to judge, but I don't know if I would have wanted to have a client of mine give those statements. Obviously, there was a reason for it. Obviously, she has very good attorneys who were there when she gave the interviews or authorized her to some extent to do this. But I don't know what I'm thinking if I'm in the jury box and I see all of this. Now, very different style. And again, we want you to comment down below and tell us who had the better style and who was more convincing in their opening arguments. Now we turn to defense attorney Alan Jackson, her attorney, explaining Karen Reed's defense that the science and the law is on her side.
The evidence in this case will establish above everything else 3 points. There was no collision with John O'Keefe. There was no collision. There was no collision.
That's kind of like real estate agents saying there's 3 things about property. There's 3 things about property: location, location, location.
And I do want to say, for anybody that has been watching this long, if you're new to our channel and you are appreciating our coverage of this, be sure to like this video and subscribe down below, because Andrew is on a mission, basically a space expedition to try to get 100,000 subscribers. We're a bit far.
Are you saying I'm in space? Here's what I will say. I don't know if you remember the Christmas tree thing, but if we get 20,000 subscribers before the 4th of July, I'll do a fireworks show on this podcast, because the state I live in, fireworks are legal. Can we get, will YouTube let us set off fireworks on our podcast? Will they?
I'll double check that,
Okay.
but hold us accountable. Get us to 20,000 subs and I will be a part of that fireworks show. We'll make it happen for you guys. I don't think we'll get to spell about the law in the sky, but we'll do our best to what we can for our capabilities.
So 2 very different styles here. Alan Jackson then pointed to the obvious elephant in the room, a big factor Hank Brennan never mentioned in his opening argument: Michael Proctor.
John O'Keefe did not die from being hit by a vehicle, period. The facts will show that. The evidence will show that. The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. You'll learn that the Commonwealth has pinned its entire case on a brazen and a flawed assertion that is untethered, unconnected to the facts and to the evidence. And their assertion is contrary to science. Because at the end of the day, folks, there was no collision with John O'Keefe.
And not only was there no collision with John O'Keefe, the #1 investigator for the Massachusetts State Police was Michael Proctor. And why was that never mentioned by Mr. Brennan in his opening argument? It's really a strange thing, that.
So how did we end up here? How does Karen Reed end up sitting in that chair on trial for an event that literally never happened? Well, the evidence is going to explain it. And it can be summed up in the following text message at the very beginning of this investigation. A text message of a now fired Massachusetts State Police officer named Michael Proctor. He was the lead investigator on this case, and he was talking about a fellow officer, a fellow cop, who owned the property where John O'Keefe's body was found. Text message with a buddy. Question, is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Answer, nope. He's a Boston cop too. That quote defines the lack of integrity of the Commonwealth's entire case, its entire investigation, and this prosecution. During the course of this trial, you'll learn much more about Mr. Proctor, why he said that, and what it really means. What you'll see and hear in this courtroom in the coming weeks is not just a story of a tragic loss. And make no mistake, John O'Keefe's death is and was a tragic and tragic loss. But the story you'll hear is about an investigation that was riddled with errors from the beginning, a rush to judgment, conflicted and corrupted from the start. Corrupted by bias, corrupted by incompetence, and corrupted by deceit. Finally, it was corrupted by a deliberate effort to avoid and to cover up the very truth that you are seeking.
And one of the things that Alan Jackson addressed, I thought very with a lot of skill, was those of you who have been following this closely, and I know most of our viewers have, is that in all of the pretrial machinations before the retrial began, Judge Cannone ruled that the defense in their opening arguments could not even mention this third-party culprit idea. Here's how Alan Jackson worked around that.
More shockingly, you'll learn that lead investigator for the Massachusetts Police, Michael Proctor, never set foot inside Brian Albert's house that day. Never engaged in any investigation inside that house that day, even though a party with much alcohol had just occurred in that house, and even though a Boston police officer was found dead or dying just mere feet from the front door on that lawn. He never secured the crime scene, never separated and secured witnesses. He never properly collected evidence. He never secured the evidence. He never searched for signs of a struggle inside or outside the home. He never properly canvassed the neighborhood. Michael Proctor.
I do want to say, obviously we don't know what the jury's thinking, but rewatching this, one of the things that I was thinking is just that this all, with the context of Brennan's past of being a mob attorney, when he speaks like this, he's doing a very good job. He's very well spoken. He's speaking with a lot of conviction. But my head is just going, it just feels like, and I've said this before, but it just feels like Brennan is just doing what he does best and protecting the mob.
Never did any of these things, even though fellow officers of Michael Proctor's actually mentioned, in their words, not mine, that it looked like John O'Keefe may have been, quote, in a fight.
So that was a really skillful way to kind of allude to the fact that there are alternative facts that are, in fact, facts or statements by these other officers. He was told, the whole defense team was, that you may not mention this third-party culprit idea in the opening argument. So instead of approaching it directly, he approaches it from the side, talking about Proctor and the fact that the investigation was not thorough. That's objectively speaking. The investigation was not thorough, and all these things, including one of the officers saying that John O'Keefe looked like he had been in a fight. Interesting. Who would have, he fought with other than a third-party culprit without using the word? Sounds like one of those word games I think we might have all played growing up in the summer at the beach or whatever. Say something without using these words. So do you remember in the opening of Hank Brennan, in the very beginning, he talked about Timothy Nuttall, the EMT who got the call at 6 o'clock in the morning and was making sure everything was all set in the EMT van.
Part of his novel writing, where it's just like when you're writing a book, you're just trying to paint the image. So we're painting a minute long introduction of this fire department interior for some reason.
Right. So Timothy Nuttall was the very first witness, and Mr. Brennan recounted or asked him to recount going to the scene that day at 34 Fairview Drive. And here's how Brennan asked it.
And when you looked up and saw that person and asked about any background, what did she say to you?
I hit him.
How clearly do you remember her words saying to you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I remember it very distinctly.
And so Mr. Nuttall remembered it very distinctly. He was locked into the testimony by his own attorney that he said it, that he heard Karen say that 3 times. But even after a great deal of pretrial preparation by the district attorney's office, which Mr. Nuttall recounted, and Hank Brennan himself helped to prepare him, the EMT Nuttall admitted that his testimony was inconsistent, is a nice way to put it.
I said, I hit him. That was how it went that morning, and that was how I remember it.
Okay, and did Mr. Brennan say, well, that's not consistent with how you've testified previously concerning the number of times you heard the I hit him phrase?
Yes, sir.
He did say that.
He wanted to, he acknowledged that I had said it twice. However, again, as I mentioned, it was said 3 times to me.
So now you do remember last year that you only said you only said that it was repeated twice.
One more time, sir.
So now you do recall that last year when you testified, it was inconsistent with how you're testifying today. Let me put it that way, correct?
I believe I said I hit him twice on the stand last year.
Right. And if you're saying I hit him 3 times instead of twice, that firefighter Nuttall is inconsistent with your testimony today, correct?
The other jaw-dropping thing that Mr. Nuttall, and I'm not going, people are going to comment that you're being mean to a EMT, and I have nothing but respect for EMTs. They have a very difficult job, and they never know what they're going to, and I have nothing but respect for EMTs and Mr. Nuttall. But one of the troubling things that he said was after this interchange, he said, well, my memory is better now 3 years after the accident. What? Your memory is better today, 3 years after the incident, than it was 2 years after the incident? I mean, don't memories tend to fade? I mean, I've had that experience. I mean, you remember something that happened yesterday better than you remember something that happened a year ago. So he tried to tell the jury that his memory is better today than it was last year. And it's just,
Well, one of the things, and this is an embarrassing admission on my part. Here I go again with the personal stories
Yes,
that
sir.
our commenters have particular feelings about. But I, as some of you guys may know, have experience doing hairdressing. And there were times where I would have like a client for like the 2nd or 3rd time and not realize that I had seen them before. And it just kind of, I imagine being an emergency responder is a lot more of a traumatic experience and yapping and chatting with people in your chair. But at the same time, it's like you get into this habit where things kind of blend in and you kind of get used to your routine. It's like when you drive to work, you don't remember the details of driving to work. So obviously these are very important things, but it's very easy when you go through all of these things to just kind of, it all starts to blend into your mind, in my opinion. And like I said, being a first responder is extremely different than just casual conversations and things like that. But you can ask me about the details of a conversation a month later and I might be unsure about it. And everybody's memory is different, but that's just where my mind goes to.
Yeah. And so if that was their best witness, putting their best foot forward, we now go to their second witness, Carrie Roberts, who people that have been following the case know all about. She recalled, early in the morning, Karen had called her and Jennifer McCabe, and the 3 of them got together. But before they went to 34 Fairview, they went over to John O'Keefe's apartment to see, if he was over there. And they recalled going over there looking for them. and claimed that Karen Reed pointed out a broken tail light on her Lexus at that point.
Karen pointed out and said, look, my taillight. And she said, do you think I hit him? And I said, no, I don't think you hit him. What are you talking about? Let's just go find him. But the taillight itself, the piece was missing. And as you got closer, there's a metal sort of square, and one of the pieces was sort of sticking out. And I only remember it because I thought if someone walks by that, they're going to catch their jacket on it.
How long of a time did you have to actually look at the taillight?
Under a minute.
How close were you to the taillight when you looked at it?
I was in front of it. I could see.
And when you talked about the taillight, you said a piece was missing. Is this the left side or the right side of the Lexus that you saw the piece of the taillight missing?
It was the right side, so it was the passenger taillight.
May I approach?
Yes.
Should I remain, Your Honor? Sure. Thank you. May I recognize what is in that photo?
That is Karen's SUV.
Is it similar or a fair and accurate depiction of how you saw the vehicle that morning?
Without the snow, I can't be positive, but this square piece was missing, as is in this picture.
The photograph you look at is not the car in the snow in the driveway the day you saw it.
Correct.
Putting that aside, is that a fair and accurate depiction of the damage that you saw to the right rear taillight of Miss Reed's car that morning?
Yes.
See, what we definitely have to tell our audience, though, is that this photograph that he was showing her there on the stand that we just showed you 2 seconds ago, that is not a photograph of the car the way it appeared that morning that she just claimed to describe. No. The photograph that the jury was shown and that he just showed her, this is the car in the famous Sallyport. This is a Sallyport picture. Yes, technically speaking, he did point that out. This is a fair and reasonable picture of the car at a different time. But, you know, the way that this played out and the order of things, you know, the jury could go home at the end of the day, the end of the week, and say, oh, yeah, look at that. You know, it was broken at that time, so there was no funny business. So
one of the things that she's talking about that is leaving me with questions is I'm out here looking, peeling my eyes. I was even just on looking up separately just now, trying to find the piece of metal that's going to catch onto someone's jacket. Sorry, but a little nitpick right there, but it was just a weird description to say that has this piece of metal that could catch onto someone's jacket if they walk by it.
And how do you see something like that when it was snowing like a banshee that day? So her story didn't hold up at all on cross-examination of Carrie Roberts by Alan Jackson. It appeared the story of pointing out the broken tail light didn't hold up.
That's Karen's SUV.
That's the Lexus SUV.
Yes, it is.
Okay, this is a picture of a camera looking down in the parking lot or the driveway, whatever you want to call it, behind John O'Keefe's place. That morning, that time when the three of them, Carrie Roberts, and Jennifer McCabe, and of course Karen Reed, all arrived. This is that time that she's trying to tell us all that's when she saw the taillight. There's Karen Reed. So let's let Carrie walk us through this.
Behind that Lexus SUV, Miss Roberts, is there another car?
That's my car.
And who's getting out of that car?
I am.
Okay. And this is the point that you were describing in your, at least in the grand jury testimony at that time.
Yes.
This is the time that you're describing.
That I thought it was when we walked in.
This is the time that you were describing, right? When you arrive at the scene.
Yes.
Or, arrive at One Meadows.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go ahead and play this through.
Did you notice that nobody stopped to look at that passenger side tail light? And even if they had, we can't see the right one, but the left one's all covered with snow.
Yeah, that it's from a mile away. You can see that it's just completely covered in snow. And maybe, obviously we don't have the other angle of it, but the whole thing is a disaster. There's snow. Nobody wanted to stay outside in the snow. It looks ridiculous right
But
now.
the point is, her whole story fell apart because, nobody stopped to take a look at it at that point, which is when she described it.
Okay, you can stop it. And you can bring the lights up. You saw the interaction between all three of you and the vehicles, correct?
Yeah.
At any point, did anybody stop and take a look at the taillight or the rear end of the car?
Not when we were entering the house like I thought, but when we came out.
Okay. And there's no video of that?
I'm sorry?
There's no video of that?
No, I don't believe so.
Right. So the video that does exist describes nearly exactly the time that you testified that y'all stopped at the back of the taillight and Karen said, look, my taillight's broken. Oh my God, do you think I hit him?
Correct.
Okay. And that obviously was incorrect.
It was incorrect.
So your memory was faulty about that incident, that part of that incident at least.
It happened on the way out of the house.
So your memory was faulty about that part of the incident that you testified to at the grand jury.
Yes.
Okay.
And guess what? There's no video of them leaving the house. Isn't it amazing how, things happen when the cameras are turned off? Isn't that amazing in this case? So I'm just hoping that the people in the jury are noticing all this stuff. So now, John O'Keefe's mother, Peggy O'Keefe, has been at all the hearings. We see her sitting on the other side of the room. And I am not sure why the special prosecutor called Mrs. O'Keefe to testify other than for the improper purpose of evoking sympathy. She recounted going to Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton, Massachusetts, where her son had been transported from 34 Fairview Drive.
So we started walking down the corridor, and as I'm walking down, I hear Karen Reed yell, "Peg, is he dead? Is he dead, Peg? Peg, is he dead?"
I just don't know. I watched the testimony. I don't know what purpose that she served. When you bring a case to court, you look at the causes of action, the crimes, and each cause of action or crime has certain elements. There might be 3 elements. There might be 5 elements. You study those and you look at each of them as a bucket, and you have to have evidence to put in each bucket. And of the 3 criminal charges that Karen Reed now faces, none of what Mrs. O'Keefe said filled any of those buckets. There was no legal, technical, evidentiary need for him to put her on the stand. And again, a personal story. I had a brother when I was young, and he died very young. And my mother carried that to her grave years and decades later. And so I have a lot of empathy for Mrs. O'Keefe, and make any nasty comments that you want down in the comment section. But I have a lot of empathy for her. She's been through a lot. No matter what you think about the case or the liability, there was no reason to put her on the stand. There was no reason to put her on the stand. Inexcusable. So anyhow, now that I ranted about that, Trooper Nick Guarino is back. And he went on the stand. And he testified to his training, and we're going to see a lot more of him because he was on the stand 3 times. They put him on, took him off, put him on, took him off. This was his first cameo appearance. He testified to his training in forensics electronics, including telephone extraction, specifically that he used the programs at his disposal to download information from the telephones of many of the individuals surrounding the case, including John O'Keefe.
Did you go through the program and create a report for all of the calls between John O'Keefe and the defendant for a period of time?
Yes, I did.
Did you go through the program and create a specific document that would show just the text messages between John O'Keefe and the defendant?
Yes, I did.
So he came back on the stand a couple of more times. Notably, he came back on the stand the third day of the trial. No, the second day of the trial. Sorry about that. And read text messages. He read text messages. They put them up on the screen in green and blue. And I didn't incorporate them into this episode because we've already put a lot in here. And I also really didn't think they were dispositive of anything. And when we did our episode with Mark Betterow, our previous episode, go take a look at that if you would like to. He agreed that there was really no reason for it. And Lainey, you and I have talked about this before. They were texts of Karen Reed and John O'Keefe going back and forth. They weren't happy with each other. They had a difference of opinion. And Nick Garino put these up on the screen, and they went on and on and on. And Lainey, as you and I have talked about before, people in relationships, they have difficulties. They have arguments. They often, they kiss and make up later. But, that's what these text messages were. And to infer that this, generated enough of a motive to cause Karen Reed to back her car into John O'Keefe, it's just, I don't know. So that's why I didn't put it up. If you want to, you can go on to day 2 of the Karen Reed trial and see them all, but I wouldn't say that you really have to waste your time. The other thing that we didn't get in here because we were preparing to do our podcast, but on Friday, the jurors, well, we couldn't have covered this anyhow, but the jurors went down to 32 Fairview in Canton and took a view. In the beginning of the morning on Friday, both David Yannetti for the defense and Hank Brennan for the prosecution told the jurors what to look for. Look at the size of the yard. Look up at the windows. The Lexus SUV will be there. Just take a look at the size of it, I think Mr. Yannetti said. And so then they went down there. But they came back and took 2 more witnesses on that Friday. They took Dr. Gary Fowler from the Good Samaritan Hospital down in Brockton, and he was questioned basically for the purpose of the blood test that they did of Karen Reed's blood in the morning. And interestingly, Elizabeth Little, who often just sits there but does a lot of background, she got up and gave an extremely aggressive cross-examination of the doctor. Well, wasn't he aware that the hospital takes these blood tests for medical purposes and not for forensic purposes? And the hospital's certified to do these medical tests, but it's not certified to do the forensic tests, is it? So that was surprising and interesting. At the end of the week, the prosecution wanted to get this blood evidence in to show that Karen Reed must have been driving intoxicated. And Elizabeth Little said, slow down. You can't, you just don't take it for granted that the hospital is going to have an accurate test. And the other interesting thing about that was that Adam Lally, who's been just sitting there for most of this trial, actually got up and did this witness. He actually did the direct examination. So Adam Lally is not just sitting there staring at the back of the bench that Judge Cannone is sitting at. He actually got up and did a witness. And he seemed more, in my view, he seemed more hyped up. He seemed kind of bedraggled in the first trial, but he seemed, he's not responsible for the trial anymore, the whole thing. So just being given this portion of the trial, he seemed really a lot more energetic. And I don't think, I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments, as I know you will. I don't think he once said, what if any. So anyhow, and then the final witness that they put on the stand was another EMT from Canton, Jason Becker, and his significant testimony was that he said the last thing that Karen Reed said that she said to her husband was an argument. Now, I don't know why people call each other husband and wife if they're not married. But anyhow, so that's how the week closed. That's how week 1 of this trial closed, was the view. And 2 witnesses, one of them being directly examined by Adam Lally. So I just found that interesting. When we asked Mr. Betterow, he didn't see a whole lot of significance in the fact that Mr. Lally did 1 witness. But anyhow, so Lainey, we have some viewer comments this week. People are really following this case more than any other case, seriously. So do you want to take the odds this week?
Yeah, so Elise 2096 said, I was surprised how similar Brennan sounded to Lally. Obviously different voice and words, but the tone is much more similar to the teacher on Snoopy. The same cannot be said for Jackson or Alessi. Their voices and tone just demand attention, and I honestly agree with them. I think this is a good comment to make. I think it's an interesting observation. And the way that someone talks isn't really, doesn't necessarily isn't really necessarily indicative to much, but at the same time, when we're coming from looking at the commenters, it could be a reflection of also what the jurors are thinking. Why is this one person coming off a little bit more almost well spoken than the other? But and one of the things too with Brennan that, and we commented, previously, is that he did have his opening statement memorized and was walking and doing his theatrics and telling his story. But I'm curious if that can almost work against him in the sense where it almost comes off as like insincere acting practice. I don't know.
Yeah, there's two school of thoughts, as I said in the beginning of this episode, and the one we did previously. There are all different types of approaches to doing an opening and closing arguments. When you take trial skills, they tell you that there are different approaches. You can do it this way, you can do it that way, you can walk around the courtroom and memorize things, and a jury may be impressed by that, or as you say, it might be distracting. And they tell you, we can't tell you the best way to do it. You have to do it for the way you works for you. I was devastated once when I was trying a case, and I was right out of law school, so I was nervous enough doing my first trials in the Superior Courts in Massachusetts. And I came up and I did my rather rigid opening argument. Then the defense attorney got up and he was just so smooth. He had a slight but not really thick Southern accent. And even the northern, audiences in Massachusetts, they loved him. They were following him. He was walking around and they were watching him as he walked across the room, and he actually made them laugh. And he just mesmerized them. I won that case, but I won that case by some miracle. Thank you. But different approaches work for different people. So anyhow, let's go to commenter number 4 from Kilo Charlie Tango, whatever that means.
Yeah, it's like the alphabet, I think, related somehow. Yeah. KCT.
So Hal Lally is sitting there like a scolded child. Hal Lally is sitting there like a scolded child is beyond me. Surely the humiliation would propel other men in his position to leave the Commonwealth's employ and seek a new career as a private attorney, especially since Hank Brennan has made over $240,000 since he was hired in September, October. And Mr. Lally's annual salary is about $100,000 less than that in approximate numbers. So, I don't know.
Oh, I'd be fuming.
I think my response, I do try to respond to some, I can't to all, but my response is, as a fellow member of the Massachusetts Bar, I do have some compassion for him.
No one naughty. The defense is clearly signaling that they intend to be much more aggressive in trial 2.0. In the first trial, I think they made a strategic mistake by assuming the state case was so bad that they did not need to directly address much of it. And this is something that a couple of people have been feeling, and they are definitely coming out appearing to be way, 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 way more aggressive, which we'll see if it works in their benefit or against them.
Well, yeah, as Mark, I actually read this one to Mark Betterow in our previous episode. Go back and watch it if you'd like. And his response to this is, when you retry a case, you always look at what you did the first time and hone it down, do it differently, see what you can change. I've only ever once tried a retrial, and there was an appeal, and we had to retry the case. And I did the same thing. I mean, you sit down with your client and say, okay, what can we do better? How do we get the evidence in a way that the jury is going to like it? What do you and I need to do to sharpen our attack? So it's not just that you messed up the first time, it's just that you can do it better the second time.
And
how many times have I said that Albert Einstein said it's pure insanity to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result?
Well, not only that too, but like beyond like the being aggressive, I think they are like putting a big focus on how they're going to be perceived by the jury, because in one of our previous episodes when we kind of briefly went over the opening statements and we were talking about how he didn't do any objections, And we had discussed like maybe that was strategic to like, let people talk and not to seem like a jerk by constantly interjecting. But it kind of also goes with them letting just Peggy speak on, everything and just not getting involved in that and offering, condolences. I think that especially with how public this case is, I think they are being very aware of how they're being perceived.
Absolutely. Yeah. Second to the final comment from Freak Interrupt. How do people come up with these names? It's hard to listen because Hank sounds like a duck with a hoarse voice. I hope at least, I know the guy. I know there's many attorneys in the Boston area that can say that, but I know the guy. I've met the guy. I've called the guy and talked to him on the phone, so I know him. So this is our commenter saying this about his voice, and people have made fun of my voice. So what? Okay, but thank you, commenter. I hope at least one juror sees through the calculated tactic of John's mom testifying. Though witness only to sadness, a flailing arm holding cell phone while fending off dog bites could cause steps also. Yep.
The real OG Essie at Andrew, as a 3L, holy crap, next month I graduate. Bar exam is up next. Good luck.
Yep.
I agree. I honestly worry about you all up there. Yeah.
The 3L means that he's a third and final year law student. I don't know if you remember, there was a book and a movie many years ago called 1L. It was about a person going into their first year of law school. So your first year of law school is 1L and your last year of law school is 3L. So good luck with the bar. It's not a fun time in life, but take the bar review class and you'll do okay. All right. So that brings us pretty much to the end, except for we are now up to 56 countries. Last week, I was bemoaning the fact that we only had 52 countries, and we had only had 52 countries for several weeks, I think about a month. But then we had Uruguay, Saudi Arabia, Kenya, and Estonia join us. So please, my goal is to get up to 60. So if you're on a country that's not on this list, send us a comment and tell us where you are, and we will add you to the list. So your final comments. I have one, but what's your final comment?
I've said a lot of my main points, which is that this is just coming off for the prosecution as very sketchy and almost as if they're intentionally ignoring the Proctor situation, which kind of is coming off like a cover-up. I do want to say, as one of my, I guess, final thoughts potentially, I'm going to miss you guys next week. I am going to be enjoying some nice sun, and I will hopefully come back tanner than I am right now. But I hope that you guys have a good time with whatever guest we have on next. And be sure to give them all the love and support, but then also give us love and support here by liking, commenting, and subscribing to our channel, and maybe commenting. I know I've said this before, but little sunshine, since I'll be.
Are you going to do a little short? Like, you remember last year, I think it was, you went down to Puerto Rico and you did a little short down there for us. You going to do a little short for us?
I'll do a little short under the condition that the people are commenting down below about the short, wanting a short. Tell me you want a short and I'll give you guys a short.
Okay, sounds like a good deal. And again, we will keep doing these end of the week episodes. I'm still practicing law, and I still need to see clients and prepare for hearings and do hearings and all that kind of stuff. So all the power in the world to attorneys, law tubers that are on from, crack of dawn till the end of the trial. But I do watch it all. I watch every minute of it, gavel to gavel. And so I'll do that, and we'll be doing a weekend review. So if you don't have the ability to watch, gavel to gavel, crack of dawn to the end of the day coverage, you can rely on us. We'll try and summarize it as best we can as the trial goes along. So thank you. Before we go into the grocery store, I have one more thing for you.
I was out walking the dog, Lily, the legal beagle, this morning, and see, there she is right there behind me. Trying to think, removing myself from the role of an attorney who's watching this case and knows or has talked to some of the players in the case. If I were a juror and I was in the position of reviewing the facts in this case, taking it all in, knowing as little as possible or telling the court that I could be unbiased, how would I really think? And it is hard, as an attorney and as someone who's been following the case to really think, how would I view the case? What would my conclusions be? And yes, I know the judge tells the jurors, don't draw any conclusions until the end. But I am just wondering what people think. Let us know down in the comments if you were on the jury at the end of what you have seen to this point. What would you think? So be sure to let us know down below. Be sure to comment. And if you haven't already, give us a subscription. Thank you. Whether you are in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.